get started. Welcome to Unity of Little Rock. I'm Jeannie McGee, and we're all here in the salon, and welcome you at home. Now, we played a lot last Sunday, and that was James Buchanan who spoke here last Sunday. The room was filled, and it was so much fun to be together again, and thank you, Angel, for taking these good pictures. And James inspired me. Well, he inspired me in a lot of ways last week, but one thing that I really caught on was what he said, I flow along with my good, I grow along with my good. And so I began to think of in the flow. I'm in the flow. That's something that, I grew up in the 60s. We were in the flow. So that has a lot of different meanings, but I really wanted to explore that in more depth. And of course, with James, we had the image last week of the labyrinth. And you may notice I put some labyrinths on the table. And these are finger labyrinths. And we're going to be using them later on, but you can kind of look, you can play around with them if you want. There's a copy for each of you, and I have more if you don't have one. But, that labyrinth, he taught us there's that one path. And I love the way the labyrinth moves. It moves in toward the center, but you're going to find as you move your finger through here, and maybe some of you have even walked a labyrinth, which is really more fun, but I'm sorry I couldn't produce that today. But at any rate, when you do it, you'll see that there's twists and turns, and you go in and then you come back out and then you go back in, and there's surprises along the way of this path of the labyrinth. It's really a very interesting path. It is like life's path after all. And then we have the image of flow, and I thought of my picture here is a mountain stream, and there's obstacles in the stream. The water's always going down, but sometimes, like with the river, it can be very lazy, or sometimes it can be very swift, and there are obstacles. There could be floods, and the good old Mississippi, if you're flying over it, you see that meandering, and it changes its course a little bit through time, but it always works its way to a larger body. Now, the river may not go directly to the delta of a gulf or an ocean, but like the Arkansas, the Arkansas River flows into the Mississippi eventually and joins up with the White River. So it's always expanding. So I love the motion that both of these things represent. So the labyrinth is like we go into our inner sanctum, and then we come back out to have an expression and to manifest. That's the labyrinth. But then with the river, what we do is we grow and expand in our consciousness. So I really like both of these images, and I'm going to be playing with them today. Now, another thing, I went to a good old Unity classic to talk about the flow. And this is In the Flow of Life, written by Eric Butterworth, a wonderful Unity writer. And he wrote this in 1982, so that was kind of earlier in his ministry, and it's still very, very, very relevant today. So now, this book, though, I will tell you, covers a lot. And don't worry, I'm not going to cram it all into 20 minutes, but he addresses healing and prosperity and relationships, aging, even a chapter on dying. It's really very interesting. There's just too much to cover, so I'm going to just choose a couple of things to emphasize today. I'm going to start by talking about what how he kind of describes the flow, and then I'm going to apply it in a couple of ways. So I'm going to try to keep it tight. Well, first he says, well, what is God? And now this is a quote by Joseph Campbell, and we just had the song God Is from Faith Rivera, but this quote y'all are familiar with. God is an intelligible sphere, a sphere known to mind, not to the senses, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. Now, if you read Butterworth, he just kind of collapsed that into God is a sphere whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. And you've heard that before. I love that. It's really what we're saying in unity. We say there is nowhere that God is not. Every point in this sphere, which is God, is thus a bubbling forth of the infinite flow of life. Every point, life flows from it. Now think about that for a moment. If you can imagine geometrically in a space, the center is everywhere, the circumference is nowhere. Ooh, that is so expansive. Now, if you can imagine it, and by the way, June is the power of imagination, so try to imagine that statement and then try to feel that statement. And as I was sitting there on my blue couch where I write many of my talks, I was just trying to think, wow, that just blew me away to really think of how expansive that description is. No matter what I may think I am the flowing forth of the one. I can only know the one as I know myself, as the living expression of the one. But I can only really know myself when I know I'm in the flow of life. The flow is an insight. Okay, so the big point that Eric Butterworth is making is that life is lived from within out. He said that consistently through all of his writing. This means that the whole universe is concentrated at the point of power where you are. You are the universe expressing as you, and the fullness of that universe can come through you, not just to you. So, I don't know. Now that's getting a little esoteric, but we're gonna get practical as we go along here. But so that flow is an inside job. Now think of it this way. So Kierkegaard, who was the founder of existentialism, was strongly influenced by a vision of inner flow. So think of it this way. Like if you were out in the desert and you had a tent that you'd set up, and you discovered that within that tent there was this spring, and it was providing a constant flowing source of that vital water that you need. And it is a source of abundance that is inexhaustible. So imagine if you discovered that in, a desperate situation, the dry desert. Now, imagine in your own life when you discover your divine identity. It's a source from within that is inexhaustible. And this is after years of trying to live from the outside. When you suddenly discover, oh, I have all that I need. Wow. And it's always there. Wow. Now I know this may not feel like that every day of your life, every moment, but it really is there. It really is there. Now getting into the flow is not a new thing. Heraclitus of the 5th century BC taught that all is flux, nothing stays still. And that is really true. You look at all kinds of forms of life, there's always this motion. And is it always flow? Lao Tzu of the 4th century, a Chinese philosopher, taught that the human spirit has at its source in the divine fountain which must be permitted to flow freely through man. He believed that anyone who flows as life flows has solved the enigma of human existence. It needs no other power. Anything that is evil blocks the flow of creative action, and everything healthy flows with the universe. So when we block it, when we frustrate the flow, but if we allow it, that's where the health comes from. So if everything is healthy that flows with the universe, then in the face of any disorder, the need is simply to get in the flow and release our imprisoned splendor. Oh, now I know that sounds real easy, doesn't it? No, it's not. But what you're really doing is you're trying to get at the truth with a capital T. Now, we Unitics know a lot about truth, but what we really long for is to be still and know truth, not know about it. We all have a lot of knowledge. I study, I read all the time, but to really sit still and know and be in the flow, it's really two different things. Now we know that in unity we use truth, we work our spiritual laws to rise to a new level of well-being. And I really kind of like that. So truth is a universal flow that can only be vaguely caught in the web of human consciousness. I mean, we only get kind of glimpses of it. It's a little bit elusive, I should say. Theology, of course, even good metaphysical theology, actually tries to kind of crystallize it. And just like we know whenever we try to describe what God is or what some of these divine ideas are, the moment we put words to it, well, that kind of captures it a little bit, but not completely. We can't really grasp that truth with a firm fist. What we hear or read simply points to the reality. It points to it. And it can only be experienced firsthand as a flow within ourselves. So, as I say, we work these spiritual laws, but Butterworth says we can't force the divine law to work for us. All we can or need to do is get into a right relationship with these principles. We get in the flow. So like the law of healing is simply the eternal flow of life that presents as an allness, even when you've got an illness. And I'll be talking about that a little bit today. The law of success is simply the flow of ideas and creativity that can turn a failure into productivity and can turn lack into abundance. What we got to understand is that divine law is always working, whether we're aware of it or not. Even if we may be frustrating its flow through our attitudes and actions, that divine law is always working. So it's really kind of a matter of our consciousness. We're always in the flow, but we get out of the awareness of it. But the need is to cease doing whatever is interfering with the natural flow from within. With awareness, then, we remove obstacles. Now, positive thinking, now that helps for sure, because we know as we think, that really colors our consciousness. But however, thought alone is not going to create consciousness. It either places us consciously in the flow, or it frustrates the flow. And I like that. He used that phrase all throughout. He said we frustrate the flow. We don't stop the flow. We just frustrate it. And heck, we get frustrated, really. So, like, recently I've been very, very sick, so all through May. And it was really hard to stay positive. But that victim consciousness frustrates the flow. But a mind fixed on wholeness puts it in a healing mode. Now, I gotta admit, my God, I couldn't breathe for a week, and I had to sleep sitting up, and so I wasn't really any real good example of being in the flow. I gotta talk about being congested. The flow was definitely congested in me, but I kept knowing. I knew I was going to get on the other side of it. I knew that really I am whole and healthy, and this is going to pass in me. And that's the whole deal about it. And I'm going to bring this up again. These things aren't permanent. but when we're in them, we almost act as though, wow, this is permanent, you know. So so there is that. Now, the thing is getting into synchrony with the flow if you can. And I know that just sounds oversimplified, but prayer is our opportunity to synchronize with the flow. With prayer, we lift our eyes above the limitations that result from the frustrations of the flow. And we try to just get, you know, ever present with the transcendence of that. We release the power from within the mind. It's the highest experience of living from within without when we use prayer, or even affirmations. Affirmations, you know, in some ways, a lot of people object, like, well, that's not true. I can't really say that. But just say it. Just realize that you know that you can rise above. Now, as long as we're I'm not being positive, let's talk about the community and beyond. So we live in divided times right now, and we often experience fear or worry or anger. We complain about the news. We, you know, gnash our teeth about all of this. But let's think about it. When we indulge in enmity, no matter what the provocation or how right we think we are, we lose our consciousness in the flow. And I've really been working on that, you all. And I'm a news hound, I admit it. There's a lot of people that say, oh, I just don't even watch the news. But I love to know what's going on, and I try to monitor that because, you know, I mean, you might imagine in this, what's been happening recently, you could get on CNN and just, whoa. But so I don't go that far with it, but the thing of it is that I think having an awareness, but then practicing not calling names and not making judgments, just knowing. And really, that's a perfect time to get into prayer. Watching the news, I didn't think about this. But try that. Get into prayer when you're watching the news and pray for the highest and best. Because we really want the highest and the best for our country, our community, and our nation, and even for the people that are kind of screwing up out there, you know. So that's an interesting thing. Like, how can we get above this and get into the flow and not get stuck on all these things? Well, Butterworth has a saying, let go and let flow. Now, you know, we usually say let go and let God. I like this way of saying that. Let go and let flow. I mean, it's really sort of the same thing. But a lot of people, when they say let go and let God, they're kind of hoping that there's a God out there that's going to fix it. But right. What about if we say, let go, let flow, get in that flow, and then we're going along with the one. So, you know, Debra Toms was here last month, and she talked about the minister that started that, one of those bracelet things that you've seen people wear, these bracelets, and this was about complaints, to go 21 days without complaining, and if you messed up, you had to switch it to the other arm and start over. Well, I think we could maybe do a let go and let flow bracelet, maybe connect that up with the complaints. Well, Butterworth, as I said, wrote this book in 1982, and here's something he said. We are living today in a complex, changing world. If there is one thing one needs more than anything else, it is light. Light in terms of insight into self, into guidance along life's way, into knowledge of the secrets of the universe, and the wisdom to use light and not abuse it. Well, I gotta know, has there ever been a time that wasn't complex and changing? Has there ever been one? I'm not sure. Fortunately, y'all, it was said in the beginning, let there be light. The light has always been here, for real. Can we use it and not abuse it? You know, from the beginning, man has always stood at a crossroad, and And you know, he's yearned for a way to see beyond the horizon, wanting to know with a little bit of certainty the ultimate course. You know, and we always come to where the roads verge into two roads. The two roads in the wood, as Robert Frost would say. But yet we instinctively sense a dimension of life in which there is an underground stream, a flow, a directive force. But do we tap into that? So Ralph Waldo Emerson, let go and let flow, I forgot that was there. See, I love that saying. Emerson said, there is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. For you, there is a reality, a fit place. Place yourself in the middle of the stream of power and wisdom, which animates all whom it floats, and you are without effort impelled to truth, to right, and a perfect contentment. So can you imagine floating down the Buffalo and you just let the stream go and you just don't worry about it? There's nothing to do but be in that current. Or like in the labyrinth, there's nothing to do but walk the labyrinth and go one step in front of the other and just to trust. Well, I know that sounds hard for me. I'm a control freak, so I'm not sure about that, but I like the idea. I really do. I'm going to be honest. Now in nature we call this instinct. Think about it. The spawning salmon, they don't do like humans and question everything. Or the migrating bird, they know what to do. I even maintain that plants have this instinct. Think of the mycelium, that's the underground mushroom kind of culture, and they say that trees, groves of aspen, communicate with each other. I think nature has it right. We humans just simply make it harder than it has to be. Guidance in a special act. There is natural guidance and it is divine. So if we can just be still, just be still long enough to listen and to know it's there. It really is. You see, divine guidance doesn't come from one fixed and unalterable way to do things. It is a wisdom, a light, a supportive flow that enables us to see the road ahead. And we see just enough of it, you know? We really do. With clarity, you know what you need to know. You can trust. You can flow in the river or in the labyrinth. Your job is simply to practice the presence. You got to determine how you might be blocking that flow or frustrating it, but then you let go and you let flow. Now, do you ever have decision paralysis? I know a lot of people that really can't make decisions. And we do have so many choices today that we have to make. I love Butterworth's take on this. He says, actually, there's no need to ever make a decision. The very effort to make the decision actually frustrates the flow. The only decision you have to make is the decision to begin, to step in, to show up. The decisions what to do and which way to go should not be made. They should be discovered. Life is whole and complete. And Butterworth says, even you may be seeing it in part, there is always, even though you may be seeing it in part, there's always a right answer in that stream of power and wisdom. It is that in you that knows beyond your conscious knowing. If you will just lowly listen, like Emerson said, you'll hear that right word. You'll know it. I know when I just try to take over and control, that's really when I get into trouble. You know, Beverly and I've used the idea of the cross. There's the vertical, which is the divine, and then there's the horizontal, which is the human experience. And when we live only on the horizontal level, well, it may or may not work out. But if we turn to that vertical thinking and living, that's where we get our answers. And now this really doesn't mean doing nothing, by the way. You know that there's a lot of people that don't make decisions, and that's really making a decision by default, a decision not to decide. And then there's also we can be controlling. Now, I told you I was controlling. Let me tell you, as a single mom, I felt like I didn't have any choice. I felt like every day I was just constantly making choices. And I knew I didn't have it, there was no one else to confer with. I had to keep doing it, and y'all, that's probably why I'm like the church lady, and I don't delegate enough, because I'm used to just having to do it, but I really want to be another way. I want to be more in that flow, and it should be a lot easier on me, for sure. So there are the two extremes, either not deciding or controlling too much. But then there's the middle, where that horizontal and that vertical intersects, and in our hearts, be still and know, let go and let flow. You can really not make a bad decision. Any step is eventually going to lead you to your good, because a negative experience encountered will actually produce a challenge that's going to teach you quite a bit. And if you really pay attention and you grow from that, I grow along with my flow. If you do that, then you're going to eventually lead yourself to the good. Now, you may meander a lot to get there, but that's a really kind of a comforting thing. There are no bad decisions. It's just you're going to make it a little harder for yourself. So I love, again, Martha Smock's saying, I go along with my flow and I grow along with my flow. So one good thing about the flow is you're never stuck in one decision or one phase of life. A good way that I got through a lot of those difficult times being a single mom was I always said, this too shall pass. How many of you used that before? This too shall pass. Well, I was chagrined because Butterworth actually devoted an entire chapter to this. He tells the story of a king who wanted his wise men to come up with a phrase to cover every change or chance or circumstance. He wanted it to fit all situations, to ease the heart and mind in all circumstances. What was inscribed was, this too shall pass away. This too shall pass. Now here's a little other version. I like both versions, but I always say this too shall pass. When things are bad, remember, it won't always be this way. It's not permanent. Take one day at a time. When things are good, remember, it won't always be this way either. Enjoy every great moment. So there's a kind of a little depth to this too shall pass. Now, this very week, I was using that saying with my daughter. My little granddaughter is exactly 11 months today. And that first year of life, talk about a flow, that is not a stagnant flow. That development in that first year is just absolutely amazing. Okay, so now we've gotten to where Erin is very mobile and life is very different. It's kind of difficult right now because, she's not talking yet, and you can't just communicate. No, stay, not like a little dog. You can't just say stay with little babies. And I was telling, she said, Mom, how do you get through it? And I go, this too shall pass. You're going to get on to the next phase. And actually, you're going to, when she starts really walking and running, you're going to really appreciate when she was crawling. Do y'all remember those days? This too shall pass. And I always said that, oh my son, oh my Lord. I just have to shake my head over some of the things I went through. And I know every time this too shall pass. It's a wonderful way to look at things. So, So life is a flowing experience, and the only certainty is that things are going to change. You're never going to stay in one phase or another. And you just have to remember that, like even the psalmist said this, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Because you walk through it. We always get through something. We just have to remember it's not permanent. It's not permanent. And Butterworth uses another analogy. He talks about the tunnel. So in the tunnel, it's dark in the tunnel, but a tunnel has two ends. Things flow through a tunnel, and there's light at both ends. And that was a neat analogy for me to think about. And this too shall pass. Now he has an affirmation about this when you're challenged. I meet this circumstance in complete confidence that he who is in me is greater than he who is in the world. I do not deny its reality, but I do deny its permanence. Some really good denials. I know that this too shall pass away. It's a wonderful way to think about that. Now, this is also true of happy situations. A lot of times we like to grab onto things and we like to go back to the good old days. But if we're going to flow and get past these challenges, we have to understand that we can't get stuck in nostalgia. It's good to remember, there's no doubt. And in fact, if you really look back, how many of you have been through a crisis and then you look back at it years later and you go, why did I get that upset about that? Or, you know, that really wasn't as bad as I thought. And and like with my son, you know, there were some things that were bad at the time, but it's not at all affecting my life now. You know, we've gone past, we've grown along with the flow. You know, if you really are aware that you're growing with the flow, you really do get past those things. But even the happy times, you can just look back and just smile and think of the joy that you had. But you can't just hold on to it, as you know. So, and then when someone we love passes to a new consciousness or into a new experience, or even in death from one plane to another, it's really a positive thing. There's always a constant movement of good. We said that in the opening. There's only one power in this universe, God, the omnipotent, the good and the omnipotent. This too shall pass, both the heartache and the joy. The only way to find a continuing sense of peace and fulfillment, is to be adventuresome, to face every day in the consciousness that this is a new day and I will accept its blessings and its challenges. It's a new, never before lived day. It can be exciting. I will enjoy it and I will find fulfillment in it, even though I know this day will pass. And that's kind of nice, because at the end of the day, every day of your life comes to pass. Each day is a continuing experience of growth. There's no need to have angst over the day. I mean, you can review it if you want. Well, what did I learn from this? But you don't need to feel sorry for yourself or worry or get stuck in it. Even if it was the best day you've ever had, you just give thanks for it and you look forward to some continued opportunities for growth. You can't hold on to a great day any more than you can stop the progress of the sun across the sky. You have to begin. You just have to. You have to wake up the next day and begin all over again. This is the great leveler of life, an evidence of a divine grace, Butterworth says, that is constantly involved in the affairs of man. You can't go back, nor can you hold on to today. Life is lived in a series of progressions, the good leading to the better, and the better leading to the best. Nothing that happens is final. Nothing is fixed. Boy, isn't that a wonderful truth? We can change our minds. We can change how we think about things. Nothing that happens is ever final. There is so much grace in the flow. I love that that was the daily word today. Take a few moments when you wake up, even before you get out of bed, before you're up and at 'em, before your first cup of coffee. Wait on the Lord. That's biblical. Or think about the divine. Get in the flow. Get plugged in. The current of life is within you as always, but you need to get your thoughts consciously on the right side. You can affirm something like this: I'm in the flow of life, and I move easily with the flow. I am radiantly and enthusiastically alive. I am free from tension, stress, and strain. I go forward in the flow of life, unhurried and unworried. I go along with the flow. I grow along with the flow. Now, if that first one was just a little too positive for you, because I bet some of you may have rolled your eyes over, wow, yeah, I'm going to get up. I'm not a morning person. I'm not going to get up and say that. But just say, wow, it's a never before lived brand new day. I'm going to look at it in wonder, and I'm going to go along with the flow and grow along with the flow. That would be a really great way to start a day, I think. I don't know. I'll check in with you, see if any of you did it this week. But anyway, now I'm going to do something a little different for meditation. This is a little longer than what I normally do.